now have your very own mask, for those of you who are watching. You saw how to do that with the sewing machine. Now we're going to have Carmen show you how to do that via hand. So, take it away, Carmen.
Okay. So, you remember, guys, that we used that pattern, and we're going to use the same pattern that Charisma used. We're going to be using this pattern. We are going to be cutting it with our junky scissors, and we're going to get these two pieces. Now, through the magic of television, I already have these. I have these traced and cut. And here is my outside, and here is my inside, and this type of fabric should be a little closer to what you're working with at home. Now, I have already, through the magic of television, I have a hand sewing needle and thread, and I am going to hand sew that for you. And I will do exactly the same process that Charisma showed you, only by hand. I have also, guys, I'm so sorry, a knot. I tied a knot at the end of my thread, and I will show you how to do that. I was trying to get two ready before ahead of time. You just wrap it around your finger, twist it, pull, and you get a perfect little knot. If it's got those little ties right there, you can cut it and make it shorter. You come over here to your handy dandy little pattern that has already been cut. This is your fabric. And I am going to go in about 1/4 of an inch, which should be the same distance as measuring with the presser foot on your sewing machine. So this is about 1/4 of an inch right here, and that is where I am going to start stitching, if my thread lets me. And I am going to start on the curved part. And I am going in and out of my fabric. Also, guys, the smaller you make your stitches, the easier it is, the tighter they are going to come out. With the sewing machine, you're making a very tiny stitch, and it is very close, so your seam is not going to open. But when you hand sew, unfortunately, we have to do it twice so that it is nice and tight. So I am going to go through these so as not to bore you, kind of fast. And you can take in several stitches at the time, and that works. And as you can see, my thread is giving me a little bit of a headache here because it wants to get knotted. When you're home, if you want to avoid that problem, a little tip is use some wax, like from a candle, just put it through the wax. And that stiffens your thread a little bit, and also helps you avoid all of these tangles, which really are not fun, but they're part of the process. And I do not have the wax on. So I have finished one side of the stitches, and now what I do, I don't know if you can see them right there because I'm not using contrasting thread, it's white and white, but what I am going to do is go back through these stitches in and out again and cover the hole that I left on my first pass. So we're going to go a little slower on these first so that you can get the hang of it, and then we will move a little faster on the next one. So I am covering all of those holes so that we get a nice and even seam that resembles that of a sewing machine. And by the way, when I was a little girl, just yesterday, this was the first thing I learned how to do because I love to play with dolls. And I wanted to make my own clothes for my own dolls. So I learned how to hand stitch all by myself. And I used to make the clothes for my dolls. And then when I was a teenager, I moved on to a sewing machine. And I have been attached to a sewing machine ever since. I absolutely love it. And for me, it is very therapeutic. It is a great sense of accomplishment to see a finished piece. And I am almost at the end here, and I will show you what that looks like. So here at the end, I am going to go in and tie that knot, and I'm sorry, it's getting twisted again. This is part of the course. That I am going to do that and tie a little knot a couple of times so it does not untie. And this will be the equivalent of going reverse on your sewing machine. And this is what your finished piece would look by hand. And I know I have to clip it, but so that you can see that seam, if you could do a close-up on that seam, it looks pretty much like that from a sewing machine if you do it twice, okay? And once you get really good at this, then you may not even have to do two because you can do your stitches really small. Now we are going to take that piece, and remember we started by sewing on the curved part, and we are going to snip with my trusted little scissors here. I am going to snip, and I don't know if you can capture these, but I am being very careful not to go over the stitches I just made because that would make everything that I just did unravel and fall apart. So be very careful, but those little cuts are very important because they help you shape your piece. And I can do this with my fingers. It's the lazy seamstress approach to this. And I am very good at that, being lazy. So I finger press that, and this is what you get. Okay? So now we are going to do the same thing. That was my inside, my pocket. So we are going to do the same thing. This is my outside. We're going to do the same thing. And for purposes of time, I am not going to go through these twice because I don't want to bore you guys with my stitches, but
Sorry.
doing it double would help close that gap and leave you a very nice seam that can be almost comparable to a sewing machine. And in here I have to tell you a story while I stitch this. Before I had a sewing machine, I learned how to sew in my teens, but I didn't have a sewing machine, so I continued to do it by hand, and whenever one was available, I would use that. And I made myself a birthday outfit, an entire birthday outfit, a skirt. I grew up in the 70s, so long skirts were in. I made myself a maxi skirt, long to the floor, a shawl to go with it, and a top, and I did it all by hand. And it was beautiful at the end. I was very proud of the job I did. I was very young at the time, too. And this is what it looks like. So now I am going to take my outside and my inside, And I am going to put those, this is the right and the right. I am going to put those two right sides together because you always want to stitch on the inside of your fabric. Otherwise, your garment or your piece is going to be backwards. And we don't want to do that. So I match that center in that center as well. And I pin a little differently from Charisma. Like I said, I'm a little lazy. So those 4 pins work for me, but this is what it looks like. And now I have it aligned so that it's going to be perfect. Everything, all of my seams match right there. Okay, and I almost forgot, I'm going to throw in a couple of quick little clips in there so that I can get that nice rounded shape. Okay, and now I am going to sew, and again through the magic of television, voila, my thread and my needle are ready to go. So I am going to do the same. And remember, I had that little knot right there. And I am going to sew about 1/4 of an inch from the seam going in and out. And you want to do these twice. Remember, when you get to the end, you want to come back and close that gap in the middle. Because otherwise, not only can your air escape and your germs and your virus escape through there, but your mask is not well sewn, it's not tightly sewn, and it is going to fall apart on you. And you don't want to waste all of that time and your beautiful fabric making that mistake when you can correct it right on the spot. Okay, so we are almost to the other end. Almost getting there. And I hope you can see what I am doing. I know I'm moving in and out a little, so. In one more stitch, I can remove this pin, I don't need it. And here I am at the end. So I am going to do that double stitch again. Okay? And that is how I am going to seal my work so that all the thread doesn't go flying all over the place. I usually do it twice. I am going to tie a knot again, wrapping it around my finger, twisting and pulling. And this time it has no, I can live with those legs, don't need to cut them. And now we are going to sew through the bottom. Getting all of those layers of fabric, those 2 layers of fabric together. And also, as I sew, I always check and make sure that I am catching my fabric, because sometimes it moves a little and you can miss a piece and finish your entire mask and then realize that you have a hole and you have to go back and undo it. And when I was growing up, I learned that lazy people like me work twice as hard. So do as I tell you, not as I do.
Oh.
It's always a good policy, right?
Right.
Could you get me the iron?
Yes, yes.
Because I need to iron mine. No, it needs to be connected. Hot.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, and I am closing here twice. I am getting my iron ready because I want to show you how that works. I am removing the pins, and here we go, guys. I am using my fingers, and you can see my big thumbs right there, and turning that mask inside out, and it comes out all ugly and wrinkly, but that's okay. We're going to take care of that in a minute. I am just shaping it with my fingers, and you see, here she goes. That's what it looks like, and of course a little different because mine is white, and this is the one that Charisma made. It looks exactly the same. We're just going to press it now and make it look a little prettier. Excuse me for one moment. I need to bring something to put on the countertop so we don't burn that beautiful table. And I am going to use your fingers, okay? Use your fingers to accommodate your fabric. And I am sewing around all of my seams. And as you can see, the steam is on. I am now pressing the other side, and if you bear with me, I know this is not the most interesting thing in the world, and I am sure that when you signed up for the class, you didn't sign up to learn how to iron. But that's something that if you want to make your own mask, you're going to have to learn. And I love to iron too, so I can teach you how to do that as well. I've been ironing my clothes since I was a little girl, and I had to wear a uniform for school. And the skirt was all pleated. It had like 6 or 7 pleats in the front and the back. And mine had to be pristine because I like to look very pretty. I didn't always look like this, you know. I wasn't always an old lady, and I would press mine every night. I was like 6 or 7 years old and was already doing my own pressing. I was very domestic, so I love ironing. And this, guys, is what it looks like once it has been ironed. And I am going to put the one that Charisma made next to it so that you can compare them. Okay, and I am sure that you're not going to see much of a difference. So now I am going to go in here and fold this side. As you can see, it's a little hairy right here. So I am going to fold it in here about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a tad less. And I am pressing that. And I am folding again, making sure that it doesn't go over my pocket. Okay? And I am doing the same thing with the other side. And folding again, making sure it doesn't go over the pocket. And guys, I have to tell you, I never used to iron when sewing until I learned that trick. That trick makes life so much easier. It really, really does. It makes all the difference in sewing. It can make the difference between a homemade finished garment and a garment that was tailor-made. And that to me is a big difference. So don't be afraid to use your iron, okay? So now I have those ends folded in, and I'm getting ready to sew those together as well for the casing for the elastic. So here I have a good piece. And again, if you have the wax at home and you can wax this thread, you can cut it pretty long. If I go any longer than this, it's going to give me a lot of headaches. So there's my little knot. And here I go. Again, go in. This is going to be a little harder now, guys, because you have more layers of fabric. So it's going to fight you a little longer. And if you're a fan of thimbles, you can wear a thimble on your finger, and it doesn't hurt your finger. But I am used to not wearing a thimble. I actually don't like them because I can't feel my needle, and I am very touchy-feely. So I want to be one with my needle. And here I am at the end. This is again where you guys would come back and do that second. And I am going to do it for you so that you can tell the difference, one with and one without, and hopefully you will be able to pick that up. I am running a second row of stitches to cover the gaps that I missed the first time. There is also a way in which you can do, it's called the chain stitch, and do these all as one, but it's a little bit more complicated, and I just did not want to get you too overwhelmed. I wanted to make this as easy as possible so that it is fun for you, and when you are done, you feel a sense of accomplishment instead of being frustrated. That's not the idea. I want you to keep coming back and learning more from us and for yourself, because it really is a great skill to have, and great therapy. For me, this is what stands between me and the psychiatrist. So that casing is finished, and I am going to run the other one with one stitch so that it is faster. And you guys can go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And this fabric, as I said before, because of all of the layers, is fighting me a little. But if you use a lighter cotton, and that is another thing for these masks, they recommend that you use cotton for both layers. So, and that is what we're using right here, and you can see it there, it's fighting me because that's 4 layers of fabric. But Carmen has been around fabric for a long time, you can't beat Carmen. And here we're going to tie that little knot so it does not unravel. 1 and 2. And there are ladies that like to go 3 or 4 times. I personally think that 2 is enough. More than that, I think it's a little overkill, but it's a personal decision. And let me grab my elastic over here. I am going to cut 2 pieces about I am going to do about 2 7-inch pieces for the ear loops. And you guys, my recommendation is that if you're making them for yourselves, you're making them for a friend, a relative, a family member, that you measure them so that they come out, they're not too loose. But for purposes of the demonstration, I am doing 7 inches so that you can see what I am doing, okay? So that is just a guide. Now here, I am going to show you something a little different. I did exactly the same thing that Charisma did. I put the pin through the elastic. I closed it at the end, and this is for the next one, because this one is done. And Charisma showed you how to do a knot because sewing this elastic in the sewing machine, this tiny little piece is difficult. So it's easier to tie the knot, but since we are already hand sewing, what I do is I take my two ends, my trusted friend, the needle here with the thread, and I go through it, and I put some stitches, and so that you guys know, even at home, if you bought one of my pieces, this is how you get it. I stop my sewing machine, I grab my needle and thread, I always have it ready, and I hand sew this piece because to me it is less bulky. It is less bulky than the knot. And again, I'm tying that twice, cutting my thread and pulling one side inside the casing so that it doesn't show, and there is my loop. And I am going to do the same with this other one that I have that is prepared here for me. And again, remember, if you do not have a safety pin, you can use a bobby pin, a hairpin. They work just as well. Actually, a bobby pin may work easier for you because it's a little skinnier than that big bobby pin that we're using there. And again, I get my ends, I put them together so that they're nice and flush, and I go through these. And on these guys, I am going through these twice, no ifs, ands, or buts, because you are going to put stress on this piece. This is what's going to go around your ear. So you need to go through it two. If you're a little paranoid and you think two is not going to hold it, hey, by all means, 3 times is not going to hurt. And that's what I am doing with this. I am going 3 times and I am going to tie it. Again, 1 and 2. So it doesn't unravel. And I am pulling that, and that's what it looks like, not the seam, or I'm sorry, not the knot, just a little seam. It's less bulky. And I am pulling that in with a little twist, and here is my finished piece. I am going to put a filter in it, just like we did with the other one that Charisma made. And there's my filter in place. And this is a piece that even the CDC would love. And I am going to put the piece that I made by hand next to the one that Charisma made for you to see. And now I'm going to have you vote on which one you like better. And if you don't say mine, well, I'm going to go home and cry.
No, don't cry, don't cry.
You did a great job.
Oh, Carmen,
Here they are.
Carmen.
That was fun. Thank you, guys. That was fun.
So now you know how to make 2 masks in 2 separate fashions in 2 separate techniques, sewing with a sewing machine versus sewing with hands. And now we're going to take a moment to answer a few questions. So can I get Charisma? Charisma, come on back. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Charisma and Carmen for you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so ladies, you were both quite thorough in your speech, in your lesson, in your class today. But I thought it might be a good idea to go ahead and ask a few questions. So people like me who don't know how to do this, maybe we can get a little bit of advice. So first question, especially for you on the sewing machine, Charisma, what's the significance of the back stitching again? Is it similar to what she did with the buttoning up pose?
Yeah, the significance of doing a back stitch is just to make sure that the fabric is, just stable. When you just do 1 stitch, you can probably pull it. It might come across. When you do 2, it's more secure.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
reinforcing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And that is what I was doing by hand, going through it twice.
Yes,
Making
also.
sure that it doesn't unravel.
Okay, and which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, y'all see, I am, with us having to take mask off to talk clear, I'm standing back. So these questions are